Whether you're leading for the first time, leading through change, or learning to lead all over again, this space is for you. No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk from those who've led through challenges, adapted under pressure, and thrived in the face of change. Welcome to Command to Corporate, where leadership isn't just taught, it's lived. Let's get to work. All right, welcome back, everyone. Glad you see you've rejoined us. Hopefully, you're getting some nuggets out of this, and we're going to keep it going. I'm one of your hosts, not horse, not hostess, but host. LP, we got T.
Hey, what's
And
up?
yeah, man. And how you been doing?
Man, it's I can't complain. It's finally beautiful weather down here in Texas.
Yeah,
So I've taken advantage of it as much as possible before it gets like really, really hot. So
yeah.
yeah, a lot of laying out by the pool. So life
All
is
right.
good.
Yeah,
You?
I haven't been out in the pool today doing yard work, trying to get the area beautification going, and and then yeah, but got the pool cleaned up, so might hit it up later. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah, man. So all right, we're gonna jump into it. Today's episode, we're talking about that transition to corporate America. So we've discussed up until this point a lot of our military experience, going in a little bit on our experience and careers within the military, and now we're jumping into the corporate America space. And so, one thing I would have to say though, for me, I didn't quite make that jump initially into, I guess you could say, traditional corporate America in the office environment. Because when I first got in the military, looking for a job, and I may have mentioned this in one of the previous sessions that we did, I
Mhm.
went to Saudi Arabia and worked as a contractor. So still kind of military life, same, um, forms to request parts, and it was very much catered, like you're just back in the military environment.
So it was civilian life light, in other words. It was a
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
step. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was definitely a baby step, and a really tiny baby step. And then when I got back to the States, I got a job on Fort Hood, which is now Fort Cavazos, as an instructor on the
Mm.
A3 Bradley, and different couple of the variants of the Bradley. So I did that, but still retired military people that just got out, still servicing the troops, still traveling, somewhat with the military, and I volunteered and went to Iraq to support the troops, and I
So you
went
went
to
to
different.
Iraq.
I did. Yep, I
So
actually
you went to
volunteered
Saudi as contractor
as a contractor,
and then
civilian contractor.
civilian.
Yeah, as a civilian
Oh,
contractor as well.
okay.
So, and they came to us and they said, hey, we need volunteers. This unit out of I think it was a guard unit that
Mm.
initially requested that type of level of support of my MOS at the time. And they said, hey, they came around and did one pass. It was just me and another gentleman that could go. And we both said no the first time. Then the second time around, they're like, look, they're willing to pay, they really need this support. And I said, okay. And he said, well, hey, look, I got kids that's getting ready to graduate high school or something right now. It's not a good time. If you do the first half, then I'll pick up the second half. So it's supposed to be a year. So it's like I'll do the first 6 months, he'll do the second. And I like
Nice.
went home, talked it over with my wife, and my kids are young too, but I'm like, okay, all right, I'll do it. We could benefit from it. Why not?
Hmm.
And then I went over there. I started out with the National Guard unit. When I arrived, they didn't have any work for me to do. I sat around for like the first, I don't know how long. and then
Sometimes military doesn't change, man. Oh my God. All right. Cool.
then a regular army unit out of Fort Stewart was like, well, look, if they're not going to do anything with him, he can come down to our camp, and we could put him to work, and he could support us down there. I was like, cool, no problem. So then I got on, get on the convoy, went down to that camp, and I did my full 6 months.
Yeah.
Um, then when I left, I was literally past the guy that was um,
Oh
relieving
man.
me, that same guy in the night. Black Hawk lands. I'm like, hey, somebody will greet you over there. We walk past each other. He goes, I get on the Black Hawk and I'm out.
So, but
Just
you
like,
guys knew that you
yeah,
were
we
qualified.
knew, yeah, we knew we were going to pass. And so it was just, I was like, I was ready to go home, and I passed them in the
Not even a
night.
high five was just like
No, I
peace.
was like, good to see you. I'm out. You'll get squared away back that way. And then,
Damn.
and then come to find out that unit, like, I don't know what is it when they start to scale now when they're getting ready to redeploy back to the states. He didn't
Yeah.
do it 6 months. He did maybe like two,
Oh,
something like
really?
that. So yeah, he was looking forward to raking in the dough for 6 months, and
All right. All
you
right.
know
So I'm sure there's a lot of people that are curious out there, just like I was when I was still in service, right?
yeah.
So, what are the financial benefits to
Mm.
being deployed as a contractor? Because I've always heard stories. I'm like, they make it sound like it's great, but I don't know how it is.
Yeah, it was. So they based the pay. So I went on behalf of, I think it might have been like BAE Systems at the time.
Mhm.
And so, and they based it on California's pay some kind of way, even though I was coming from Texas. So they paid you 0 to 40 hours, your normal hourly wage.
Uh-huh.
40 to 80 was time and a half. And then I think they gave an additional like 16 hours, which is double time. But that was all per week. So you
Wait,
got paid 96 hours either per week or every 2 weeks, but it was extremely high. So
96 hours
hours a week,
a week?
a week. I think it was a week.
Holy crap. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
how many
so
hours
when
are on a week, but it's
no, so because I think they're accounting for, you could be called up at any time of the night to
true.
support these units. So
Yeah.
it's like a 24/7 thing. So I want to say it was per week. and
Wow.
and it was just flat. So it was like you got the 0 to 40, 40 to 80, the double time all every week.
All right. Was there any kind of tax advantage or you were just being taxed?
No, it is. So I know when I was in Saudi Arabia, it's a cap. So at the time when I was in Saudi Arabia, from 0 to like $82,000, you don't pay taxes on. You just pay taxes on everything above that.
Okay.
So depending on, even
That's
if
pretty
it's
good.
60,000, 80, I mean, it's the taxes are low, because you just got basically tax free from that time.
So it's not a
So
bad option to transition.
no,
That's a good
no, and
first. Yeah.
I met people that had those jobs,
Mhm.
and they were going to stay. They literally said, "I will stay over here until I have $1 million in the bank,"
Oh,
because they were making so much money. And I think a lot of them, when they did their R&R and their rest and relaxation, for those that don't know R&R, they would like go back to Kuwait or something like that. So when
yeah.
I left Iraq, my I guess company contact was in Kuwait,
Hmm.
and he said, "Hey, do you want to just chill here for a few days, relax or whatever? No problem. You could stay if you want to, check out." And I'm like, "Nope, put me on the next thing smoking. I'm ready to go back to the States." I was like,
Oh
"No."
man. All right. All right, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, but during that time,
Yeah.
I was going to school. And so, and that was due to abruptly getting out of the military, didn't expect it, hurt my back. So it was like, plan to stay in, couldn't, did those jobs. But then at the time, because I had to, I didn't plan to exit the military when I did, started going to school because really thought, in my mind, I don't want to be dependent on the military. I don't want to be dependent on doing contract work.
Yeah.
Not to say that you can't go get some other kind of job, but those were the ones, if you don't have a degree, are going to pay the most money. And so,
So your experience was really kind of unique in that it was unexpected.
yes,
You may have not had time to go through the transition assistance program. That thing starts like usually like a year out for some people.
yeah,
For those that are planning to know they're going to get out or
yeah,
retire. And then so it was like a very quick shock then I
it
guess.
was. It was. And the one thing that I used to do when I first enlisted, and for those that may be tuning in, it might be something to explore.
Hmm.
Excuse me, is every time I came close to the reenlistment point, I
Mhm.
would get my resume together and I would apply to jobs in the civilian sector and literally go interview.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
very smart.
Yeah, man. And being that I was out of Fort Hood at the
Yeah.
time, I
Mhm.
remember going to College Station for job interviews. So I
Yeah.
was testing the waters to see, you know, first of all, what did they think about my resume? And I was getting interviews and I would get occasionally get job offers, but the money just wasn't right. I'm like, I would want to make more money than that, and it was probably more than I was making in the military, but I was like, I want to make a little bit more, especially if I'm going to have to move to a certain area.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever, you know, came into Austin and interviewed, but I was at least exploring and doing that. And then if I didn't see anything really taking, then I would reenlist. And I did that 3 times. So I'm exploring the border, developing my resume over time. So
Wow.
then
Yeah.
when I did get out, though I didn't go through ACAP at the time a lot, I had been working on a resume. Now, even though I've been working on it, was it, fabulous or whatever? It probably still had work to do, but that's how I tested the water. But I realized that for me, school was the answer. I had to go to
So
school.
you were really kind of, in some ways, more prepared than a lot of people. I mean, like, for example, me, I retired. My resume was finally like created and updated. I don't know, maybe a year out,
Yeah,
Um, but you were updating it continuously over the years.
yeah. So each
And
each
so
each
you,
time I like new duty station or new
right.
role, probably more new role, I would update it based on that.
And then you actually went out for interviews.
Yep.
So you kind of got that fear out of your system a little bit because I know, like, part of the transition is sitting there for an interview for a civilian job interview for the first time,
Yeah.
and it's like, oof, it's weird. It's a little, I'm a little nervous. I'm like, what are they going to ask me?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was stressful.
Yeah.
I wish I had some more practice before doing it for the first time, but so it's good. So I
Yeah.
guess, were you scared of anything then?
Because I was putting myself out there and
Yeah.
I had something to fall back on,
Hmm.
I don't think that I was. I was just, I think just going for it and
Nice.
just to see. But I remember having a buddy when I was in Saudi Arabia, he was thinking about getting out and he had that fear.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like if you're, checking all the boxes, doing what you got to do in the military, the likeliness of you getting kicked out for some fired, so to speak, slim to none.
Yeah.
And for him, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know that I'm gonna make it. And basically really being fearful, but I would suggest to people that if you are, you know, just test the waters. Like, I would say it's if you don't have anything solid, you don't have a plan, I would say stay in. Now it could be rough circumstances. Maybe you're trying to change your duty station, whatever it can do to help you along, but you want to be as prepared as possible. And if there's nothing out there, I mean, it's hard out there. The economy is, depending on where you live, cost of living, all of that stuff. But back to that guy, he was fearful. And I'm like, come on, man, no, you can make it. I'm encouraging, I'm here. And he was like, nah, nah.
Oh, yeah. So I've seen the NCOs. I've had some NCOs, get out and retire, and they were nervous, and to be perfectly honest, that made me nervous, because
Yeah.
I see them. I mean, 20 something years, great NCOs, I wouldn't think they would be nervous for any reason, because I know what kind of job they do. I know what they can deliver. But a
Yeah.
lot of times they were extremely nervous, and not gonna lie, when I was getting out, I was nervous too. Um, I wasn't sure, one, if I'm gonna make as much money as I was making in the army.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden in my mind, I was like trying to game it in my head. I was like, it's okay if I don't get a decent paying job. I have to start at the bottom. And so I was just kind of like talking myself into mediocrity. I was just
I
gonna,
mean, yeah,
yeah, I was just like, any job at this point.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I was nervous, and I totally avoided it. To be honest, like
Really?
when I retired, yeah, like when I retired, I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm very fortunate. I wasn't married, no kids,
Yeah.
and I paid off all my bills by that time. And I was like, well, the army's gonna store my household goods for a year. I was
Mm.
like, perfect. And so it's like I don't want to grow up yet, and so I decided to go ahead and travel, and that's kind of what I did.
Oh, that's good.
So I traveled for over a year, and
Over a year.
yeah,
Man, take
so
notes out there. Take
15
notes.
months. Yeah, if you are fortunate, where you have no wife, no kids, no bills, yeah, I highly recommend people go out and do it, but
Yeah.
not for the same reason as I had, kind
Yeah.
of just avoiding adulthood, I guess.
Yeah.
But I did ease my way into it in that while I was traveling on the road, I did apply for some jobs, and I did interview for a few out there while I was traveling. The benefit to that was I knew I didn't necessarily need a job at that point.
Yeah.
It was a few months into traveling. I was like, oh, this is okay. I'm not spending as much money as I thought I would. And so I was actually like kind of living comfortably. Granted, yes, sometimes it was in a hostel, but still, I was like, all right, this is good. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
helped me make that transition, honestly, because
Mm.
I was interviewing and I was like, I want to travel some more, but let me go ahead and interview and try out.
Yeah.
And so that I had a few practices before I eventually decided, okay, I have to, buckle down and look for a real job.
Yeah.
And so all those practices paid off at the end.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
good.
I was nervous, man.
Yeah. And I know for me, like, when you say travel, man, I didn't have that luxury. I had to hit the pavement with I had young wife, young kids, and so I'm like, I got to provide, and so and not to say that my wife wasn't, but she was in school at the time to
Mm,
to become a nurse, and so that's very demanding.
yeah,
So I'm like, I need to get out there and work. And not that she didn't work, but it was tough to go to school during the day and work at night. And I'm trying to keep grinding. And so I know that I made my way into like finally getting into the civilian sector, getting hired for my leadership experience. And one thing I would say for, you know, the non-commissioned officers and officers, for one, I think making rank, uh, uh, from my standpoint, is needed. I
okay.
think
What is that?
I would say it's needed.
Mm,
It puts you in a better position. It's not needed, but I think it puts you in a better position to get, maybe slightly higher level jobs where if you were able to be, for any officer, I think it's, that that's in a class of its own because, most of those roles you possibly could get are going to be supervisor, manager, or manager and up.
yeah,
For enlisted, or for the non-commissioned or enlisted people, I say if you can make it to sergeant, staff sergeant, sergeant first class, up in that, now you're going to be considered for a
yes,
supervisor role, maybe a manager role. So don't sell yourself short. Don't hold yourself back. Like go ahead and make that rank as quick as you can, because it will pay off. Anytime there's courses, I was always in the mind of, and this is another thing I did. I was always thinking about my resume when it came to courses. When they would say, we need volunteers to go to whatever course.
yeah.
And I would raise my hand and they'd be like, yes, Perry, whatever. And I'd say, does it come with a certificate? And if they said no, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to take it. I need
That's
proof.
fair though.
I
That's
need
fair.
proof that it, but if they said yes, no matter what it was, I'm like, okay, I'll go. And I would take it because I'm just padding the resume. So that's what I
Yeah,
always thought about. So people might think, oh, that's crap. But think past that. Is it worth anything? Could it be worth something in the civilian sector? And if so, freaking go to that course. You get out of your day to day for a
yeah,
little bit, take this class, get a certificate,
yeah.
put it on the CV.
You're absolutely right, and I think I second that advice, and just I'm going to add a little bit more to it.
Mhm.
Um, I came in an army. you know, from day one thinking I'm gonna get out. You know, it's weird.
Yeah.
But like, I came in, I was like, all right, what kind of jobs are available in the army? And I was trying to think like, okay, I'm gonna go in, get some sort of skill, and get out. And as I'm sure a lot of people, I don't know, maybe I'm assuming a lot of people do that. But yeah, I was like, what kind of job? I was like, satellite communications. This was back in 1995. Um, sounded super fancy. I was like, that's what I want. And then I get to West Point. I graduate, get commissioned in aviation. I spent a few years in aviation before I had to medically transfer out of aviation. And then I was like, once again, I was like, what am I going to do? What branch am I going to go to? And then once again, I started, when I get out, what field do I want to work in? And to me, the closest thing that maybe translated to civilian sector was, finance. And that's
Mm.
kind of like, okay, I'm going to transfer to finance. And then along the way, I started looking at my next job. I was like, okay, I need to get a master's degree. So I was thinking of that. I was like, I need a master's degree when I get out. A lot of the jobs that I had, I just kind of was trying to think ahead of like,
Yeah.
when I get out, when I get out, when I get out. And I encourage people to kind of, take that similar approach. Don't get me wrong. I mean, do what you're passionate about, and do what's good for your career. But also, it's you got to think ahead a little bit,
Yeah.
which is kind of echo off your thoughts as well.
Yeah. And trying to determine, I don't even know if I thought about truly what I wanted to do when I get
Mm,
out. I think when I first got out, like I told you, went overseas, I think I was just trying to make money, sustain my
mm,
family because it was so quick. But then once I finished school and I did my bachelor's in IT management at the time, thinking that, oh, that's of interest to me until I don't know, when I got my first job in corporate America completely away from the military, it had nothing to do with any of that. It was really based on the leadership experience. It was good that the only two things that mattered for that job was that I was in the military and I had a degree. So
hmm.
they were looking at leadership experience. So again, making some rank
Yep.
and then having a degree. And that opened the door to that's what we want you for. You can, and it was in a manufacturing environment. And I remember when I was interviewing, and when I initially went in to interview, because I had done electromechanical work in the military, I went in to be a maintenance supervisor.
Okay.
They didn't pick me up. So then I got a call back from a production supervisor and said, hey, they don't, I would want you on my team because I think that we need that leadership on our team. And I said, cool. So then I did another round of interviews. And I remember one guy saying, hey, you never worked in a manufacturing environment before. Why should we hire you? And I said, well, you're not asking me to manufacture anything. You're asking me to lead people that manufacture something.
Oh
And I
yeah.
said, and what I'm good at is leadership. I'm just have to be competent enough to learn something new. And they were like, okay. And I got the
That's a
job.
really good answer. You're right.
Yeah.
That's 100% correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not
Because
asking you.
I'm not making anything. You want me to lead people and, and get better productivity, build morale, all of that stuff. So that's what I'm good at. I just have to be able to learn something new.
Brother, I'm taking notes right now in my head. That's a really good line. That's a
Yeah.
really, really good line. Yeah.
Yeah, anyone feel free to steal it, but if you do and it works, definitely tell that story. So, but yeah, man. So I think,
Yeah, I like that.
and then when I look at, we have a couple questions that we go through, and translating your military skills into something civilians can understand.
Mm,
For them, it was, well, they associate quality leadership with the military.
true.
So it's really now when and some people go through different programs through the military, having your resume reviewed and all of that stuff. And I don't know what it is now, but even when I did it then, it still wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I agree.
And I still had to, I remember finding someone that actually had um, paid to have their resume done, and then even fast forwarding, paying to have it done. And so, for those that if you're now we have AI, we have a lot of different tools that may be out there, but definitely investing in yourself, spending a little bit of money,
Yep.
get your resume tightened up,
Yep.
because when it comes to applying to jobs, on another note, your resume should tailor to the job you're applying to.
Hmm.
So I've seen on my side in the role I'm in now where I get some resumes that come through, and I get plenty of, I'll talk to military people, they'll call me up, they'll contact me and they say, well, I can do that. I'm like, I know you can, but the civilian hiring manager, they don't know what this means. They don't
Yeah.
understand your rank. They don't know what that comes with. So unless you tailor it, so what does that mean that you have to do? You may have 5 different versions of your resume, depending on what you're going to apply to. So you might say, well, I'm going to make 2 versions and run with these. But then if you come across a role and you're like, well, now I got to tailor it, you got to translate that military experience into what speaks to them so that they know, okay, now I get it. Now I get what you're talking about. Now I can see how that could benefit me.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I did the same as far as translating my experience into a civilian resume. I did the same as in I had a free service do one, and
Mhm.
then I paid another service to do the other. And I tell you what, they both were not perfect.
Yeah.
Uh, I think they did an excellent job of giving me a good foundation to start off
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And then I ended up looking at one. I was like, I really like the format of this. Looked at the other. I was like, this is better wording. And so I just started combining the two, and just to put something that I like and that I could comfortably talk to.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if there's a clear cut answer out there, honestly.
No,
Um,
no.
Other than no matter what you do, it's you're gonna have to probably look at it and add to it and make it your own,
Yeah.
no matter if it's a free service or a paid service or whatever. But if the free service is available to you, I definitely recommend doing that, with the caveat that you have to go back and make sure it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
You can't just blindly accept the resume that somebody else built, because it's difficult to own it then,
Yeah. I
So,
agree.
hmm,
Yeah. But I think making it in the door, that's the first step.
yeah.
And I think when I first got into that first civilian job, my thought carrying from the military, I'm like, okay, I'm back into leading people again. And I said, okay, so what am I going to bring from the military that I brought? And as I mentioned before, I'm going to be that employee's leader. So when I remember taking my first role, I was taking on a shift of employees, going to night shifts. So I was asking a bunch of questions like I previously done in the military. What do you like about working here? What you don't like? And I would get feedback from other people, other supervisors, and watch out for this employee, watch out for that. And I would say, none of that matters because this is a clean slate. So when I'm not going to judge anyone at all, regardless of what you say, until I get in there for myself. But I think when I think about a culture shock, having people come up and be like, and start talking about people, and I'm like, first of all, you don't even know me. But to just start, running down the dirt on employees, and I'm like,
Mm,
that's all fine and dandy, but I'm here to, because it could be, I always say, it could be the leader. It could have been
sure.
you.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit there and just say, well, let me go ahead and have this preconceived notion about this employee because it could just be that they just have not had outstanding leadership before. So I'm going to try to
Sure.
give it to
Yep.
them, because that's what I'm
Like,
bringing to the table, outstanding leadership.
fair enough, man. Fair enough. I like it. So that was the shock to you. Is that what you're
I would
saying?
say that was a little bit, but I think one of the ones that really stand out to me is I remember an employee coming up to me and they were like wanting to go on FMLA or something, which
Mm,
I had not been exposed to. And I know that right when I joined, like there was an employee that had just came off of it. So I was like, oh, why don't you go ask so and so? Maybe they could tell you about the process. That's all I'm saying, not their business, the process. Then the employee that I directed them to go talk to came to me and said, "Hey, I don't appreciate you telling so and so my business. That is personal, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, what business? I'm
Yeah.
talking about the process. And then that right there, it was just like, I realized that it's just not the military. People are way more sensitive.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to be careful. And so I was just like, that probably was a big shock as to how, you definitely don't want to end up in HR. I never ended up in HR like that when I was in that space. But to just someone just hit you with that. And I'm like, I'm not talking about, I never told them anything about you. I just said, hey, you went. Why don't you just share your knowledge of the
Yeah.
process? Because I don't know, but you do. And they took offense to that. So I think that was probably one of the biggest shockers on my, I'm like, whoa, it was not business in my mind, but okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I probably would do the same. You know,
Yeah.
I don't see a big issue there,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, I definitely am. Part of the civilian world is that you have to be a little bit more tactful, I guess, maybe, or a little bit more sensitive to people.
Yes, definitely.
Um, yeah, so I mean that is a shock
How
as far
about
as
you? When you
experience.
first got into corporate America, anything that you remember in
Um,
that first experience, that first transition,
honestly, it's
without
not.
naming names or companies?
No, I mean it's not bad, I guess. Yeah, it was not more. It wasn't the civilian shocked. It was more of an internal shock. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is, I enlisted back in '96, and I
mm,
finally retired in 2001, right?
yeah,
And so throughout the entire time, as I got, more time in the military and got more rank, my responsibilities got larger and larger, and I started managing just different level of um, soldiers, NCOs, officers, and civilians, and to the point where I was leading and working with GS 12, 13, sergeant first classes, master sergeants,
yeah.
sergeant major, and that was the level I was interacting with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And then I go to this company that may deliver packages to your door every day, or I don't know. Um, and I'm working in a warehouse, and all of a sudden now I have a shift of over 300 employees, civilian employees. But
Yeah.
the difference is that these are entry level employees,
Yes.
and so going from managing, senior non-commissioned officers, senior DA civilians, and then maybe just having like literally a handful of people to 300 plus, basically privates,
Yeah.
um, or lower enlisted, and that was a shock because I haven't done that in a long, long, long time, and
Yeah.
my mind has changed. My leadership style has changed since working, since I was a platoon leader, for example.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was a shock. Like I had to unlearn, how I'd interact with people because I was totally interacting with professionals in my late career, at the end of my career in the Army. Um, and that required a certain tact, it's
Yeah.
different. But taking a step back and essentially managing, and I say privates, and I don't mean it in a disrespectful way at all. It's just
Yeah.
that, initial entry, entry level employees. So this may be, their first or second job. I mean, it's a lot of the age range, mostly probably lower 20-year-olds,
Yeah.
and so that takes a different type of leadership, and so I had to like unlearn my leadership style and kind of take a step back to when I was like, okay, when I was a platoon leader or whatever, or when I was a commander,
Yeah.
I had to be a little bit more firm
Mm,
in my approach. And that was a little bit uncomfortable because I haven't had to do firm,
yeah.
for a very, very long time. And so that was a bit of a shock, honestly. And And it took a long time, and I stumbled, and because I was trying to I was probably a little too soft in my approach, and not as firm as I needed to be.
Mm.
And yeah, I kind of, I could see there was moments where I people were trying to test me,
Oh,
people were trying to push me, and not listen to what I say. Um, so yeah, so that was a challenge. And then of course, then I have my bosses now looking at me
yeah.
like, oh, you're supposed to be, army guy, you're retired, you're an officer, you're supposed to know how to deal with these people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was not a very pretty picture for me, honestly, for a little while there,
Wow.
until I had to kind of take a step back. It's like, okay, this is a different leadership style I have to approach with. Um, and so I did, and that worked out a little bit better. But I also tried to leverage the managers that worked under me as well.
Mm.
And so that worked out well. But the shock was just taking a step back in the type of people I was leading. That was the biggest shock.
Yeah, I think my approach was I wanted people to be professional.
Mm,
And so, because when I came in, I had a few people younger than me and plenty of people older than me.
mm,
But I'm yet your supervisor. And so I'm having to learn what you're doing,
mm,
really trusting the word of you when it came to
yeah,
decisions,
yeah.
and really saying, and some of them say, look, I'm not steering you wrong. This is what we need to do, until I learned to make the calls on my own to say yes or no.
Mm,
But I would hold people accountable once I learned. And I remember, uh, for example, you worked in an area where you had to have on safety shoes.
mm,
And so one day I decided to wait in the clean room and check to see if people had on safety shoes. And people have been used to not doing it and wearing, because it was comfortable to wear sneakers because you're wearing over boots. And I
yeah.
remember stopping people and saying, go back to your locker and change it. If you don't have it, you are going home. And they would be, some people were so upset. And I'm like, but it's the rules, it is the
Yeah.
policy.
Yeah.
Go change or you're heading home. That's it. And they were just shocked. I mean, I was busting people for that. I remember, but believe it or not, I keep in mind part of the NCO creed I mentioned on the previous episode, being fair and impartial and recommend reward and punishment. So I'm being fair and impartial. Everyone must follow the rules to include me. So are you supposed to wear earrings in the area? No. Well, I do it all the time. Well, I'm sorry that no one has checked you before, but you can't wear them. And I'm nice and polite, but
Yeah.
some of these same people who I've, I guess you could say raised things and kind of held them accountable, they became lifelong friends after that to this day.
Nice. Okay.
So I remember one of my closest buddy now, I relieved him of like a secondary duty. It wasn't like he was getting paid, but he took on a responsibility. And I'm like, this is not working out for you. He was highly upset at the time, basically stormed out of I was talking about him, but then later came back and said, I know you have my best interest at heart. I feel less stress from it. Thank you for doing that. And I remember writing people up. And again, it's straight by the book, but I would come in every day and still greet you and talk to you. And I'm going to have the same conversation. You will see no change from me because it's by the book. This is not personal. So
Yeah.
I kept doing that. And I remember having a firm conversation because it was a lot of emotion, people talking behind, getting mad, attitudes. And I remember stopping the production area, pulling everyone to the side and said, this is not some high school physics class. I'm not the teacher. I said, we are professionals. We work in an environment. Some of y'all are older. We need to act like professionals. Do not let my pen get hot. That's what I used to always say. Because once the pen gets hot, it's going to just be looking to write up people for all kinds of nonsense. So it
I
was
like
like,
that. I'm gonna
yeah, don't,
steal that.
yeah,
Oh,
don't let the
man.
pig get hot because it's like once it's smoking, it's like I can't cool it down. It's gonna take a minute.
I like that.
So, but yeah, and I've terminated plenty of people, you know, like in that same space, young contract, not really having
Mm,
an interest, but I would give them all the same pitch. Like, you can be here a while. You put in your time, you'll get converted to full time. The same pitch to everyone. I'm personally walking them around. Now it's up to you what you do with it, But again, that same group of people that I was tight on still said, we appreciate you and recognize me for being, a leader for them. But it wasn't like I wasn't holding people accountable. I'm like, you have to do it. This is the environment we live in, we work in. And so I think
yeah.
trying to challenge them to just be better, and then giving people opportunities when it's deserved, trying to, you know, boost morale and a competitive spirit within them, who can produce more, and creating certificates and things to give them, and ways to recognize them that hadn't been done before. But really trying to bring out the most and encourage and have a really strong team. Even to the I remember I have a buddy of mine that also worked at that place, and he said he gained a lot of respect for me as a supervisor because one day my employees, they had to go down the area that was a little bit more challenging, and they said, oh, we can't do it, it hurts our back and this and that. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, well, let me go see. So I go down to the area. The guy is the in charge, like a special in charge of the line. I say, hey, you mind if I get on the line and work for a little bit so I can kind of see what this is all about? He's like, you want to get on, because supervisor didn't get online. He said, you want to get online? I said, yeah, I need to understand the complaints, so I actually need to
Yeah.
do the work. So can I get on the line? He was like,
Yeah.
sure, you can get on the line. I said, give me a quick brief and I'm gonna get to work. And then I did it for a while, and then I raised my hand, and I don't know, maybe an hour or something. And I said, raise my hand. I said, okay, got it. And got off the line. And then after that, he said, utmost respect. He said, you didn't just take their word for it. You actually went and did it. And that reminds me, back when I was in the military, whenever I had soldiers go off and do a task, and say, I would never have you do anything that I have not done already or that I would not do. And so I've been in the back of a S&P trailer dumping out trash from a DFAC, and the DFAC is dining facility. S&P is just like an 18 wheeler that's like cut in half and open, full of trash, hot, been out there from all these different dining facilities. Then I go out to the dump and literally picking them up in wet weather gear and throwing them in the dump. And
Ah,
I've done that, and I volunteered for that on a side note, because you know why, we were in the field, and anyone that did that got to go back to the rear every day and take a shower. And I was like,
well, you needed
that's
a shower after that,
yeah,
though.
but I didn't have to shower in the field and do like baby wipe or whatever in a field shower. I got to go back, and you would go back for like 2-3 hours, and then they come and pick you up. So I'm like, I will take it. I will volunteer. But I always had that mindset that, I'm not going to have you do something that I wouldn't do or that I have not done. So since I haven't done it before, I need to get on the line and do it to learn. So
Okay,
yeah.
I like
All
it.
right. So where are we? Where are we? So I think, one question: how
Mm,
important was it finding community after getting out, and where did you find it? And one thing I would have to say, and I think I may have mentioned this before, is that was probably somewhat of a shock too, I guess, because in the military you have that more family feeling, and I did not find that in the
mm,
civilian sector. Yeah, people went out, hung out, partied and stuff, but it's just not that same kind of bond.
yeah.
And so that was, even when I was as a when I went to Saudi Arabia, it was still a bond of people.
Hmm.
When I was instructor, it's still kind of that bond, so to speak. But civilian sector, it wasn't there. I mean, I'm not to say that I didn't make friends, but it's just not the same.
No, I 100% agree, and I think yeah, I didn't find that. I mean, it's slowly, like for example, in our group, I'm slowly, getting those moments of in our veterans group. You know,
Yeah.
every once in a while I get moments of that, glimpses of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, that's so nice, you know, being around a group of people that are like-minded, that understand the joke, that understand my vocabulary sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's always
Um,
refreshing.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that was a struggle for me too as well. You know, it's you're out there and it's a whole new world. Nobody really understands you as well as the your brothers and sisters back in the service.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's still sometimes hard, you know.
Yeah. It is. And I've been out for quite a while, and I would say, I've met friends here and there, but it's never been the same.
No.
To say that I've, you know, like outside of a veterans group or leaning back on those people you knew in the military
Mm,
and still maintaining, but people spread out and they go all over the
yeah,
place. So it's still not the same. So to say
yeah,
that you are going to have community, you might have to work for it. Maybe it's through a social club outside of work, or maybe in work, or maybe you're part of some other kind of club. And I would be curious to know, like those people that have gotten the military,
yeah.
have you found community? Did you ever find community? And if so, what was the community that you found? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point where like I've even considered like going back to be some sort of VA civilian,
Mhm.
because I do miss that community, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, it sometimes feels lonely a little bit. It's weird. It's hard to.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
I can feel that. I can definitely feel you on that one for sure.
so but
All
yeah,
right.
good chat.
All right, yes, definitely. All right, so we're gonna do a rapid fire real quick. So, what
All
is
right,
the one military habit you still can't shake?
4:30 in the morning wake ups
No,
and
you can keep
workouts.
you can keep it.
Yeah. What about you?
uh, I mean, probably definitely on time. Early, being there early, because
Yeah.
if you're on time, you're late. So
Yeah.
that's not something that I'm going to shake. And then we talked about it before, drinking plenty of water, like that is my
Oh, that's
favorite.
true. Yeah.
All right. Civilian meetings, better or worse than military briefings?
I don't know. It's a good question. I kind of like my military meetings.
Yeah, I would probably say military. I'd take a military briefing over a civilian
Yeah,
meeting.
I would.
Oh, all right. What's the one civilian workplace thing that still blows your mind?
You know, I really like that how there's like in our office we cater a lot of things. Like
Oh,
there's always
true.
breakfast, there's always lunch. I
Yes.
mean, it's like every
Yes.
day there's like
Yeah.
always somebody eating it. And I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, like, like
Yeah.
sometimes I go all week without fixing my own food. It's just
Oh,
because
for
there's so
real.
much food
Yeah.
for breakfast or lunch. So yeah, that's a
Yeah.
shock to me still.
Yeah. Yeah. You can definitely, if you hang around the kitchen around breakfast and lunch, you can be fed all day for sure.
Yeah. What about you?
Uh, what's the one civilian workplace thing that blows your mind? I don't know. Oh, I know what it is. Probably the way that reviews are done. Because reviews,
Oh yeah.
because I'm used to in the
Yeah.
military, you give individualized reviews,
Yeah.
whereas now it's more like you writing your own for someone else to give you feedback. Like they're not paying attention, and maybe they're paying attention, but I'm like, I need you to write everything down yourself. You, tell me about my performance, not me tell you about, remind you of my performance, such you. So I think that blows my mind. In the
Yeah.
past I've experienced that. I think that was crazy.
Shoot, but I take advantage of that. You tell me you want me to write
I
my own.
mean, yeah, yeah, but it's like
Glad.
as long if you're gonna write it, then
Yeah.
take it. If I say I'm
Well,
a rock
true.
star
Yes.
and I have all the proof, take it.
Yeah.
Don't say, well, no. Well, you didn't write the thing. I did. All
Oh,
right.
that's
What
cool.
was harder, basic training or your first civilian interview?
Man, basic training.
Yeah, basic training for sure.
Yeah.
I don't
I
even.
didn't see people drinking toilet water. My first interview. I can't live that down. I'll never forget that, man. Never.
Yeah, for real. All right. Well, I think we'll call it there.
All right.
So appreciate everyone that's tuned in. Definitely anything you got from it. Definitely drop some comments below. And as always, like and subscribe. We definitely will be back. If I can get the words out, we will be back, of course, next time. So until then, you know, have a good day.
Cool. Thanks, Larry. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Appreciate it.